What I want to talk about is this idea that in media today, individuals are brands. Social media now is individual. We'll talk about that. Social media listening. You have an individual brand. We're going to talk about what that might look like. How do you know where your audience is? How do you connect with them? How do you keep up with them? And then publishing for spreadability. How do you use social media to push out things that that audience is going to be interested in? So really, I want to establish this idea that social media is about individuals. And then I want to talk about how you can pull things from social media and then how you can push things to social media and use it as a tool for both different directions of a conversation. So the first thing to remember is that social media is really about the individual. And as soon as I wrote this, I thought, actually, all media is really about the individual because people read it individually. And I remember standing in my newsroom when I was your age, when I was the editor of my student paper, and we just had a multicultural center open up on campus, and it was really awesome. And my lazy freaking photographer comes back, and what picture does he have of this new grand opening of the multicultural center? A picture of the building. And I thought, I might actually kill this person because the multicultural center, and this was like 10 years ago, so this was a big deal then. It was interesting. Not a lot of colleges were interested in having organizations and centers like this. Could have had lots of great pictures of the opening ceremony, of the people who worked there, but no, instead I got a picture of a building and I thought, I'm going to kill them. And the reason is because nobody cares about a building. When people are reading the news and they see a picture of a building, who cares? You don't connect to that unless there is something obviously embedded in the building that has meaning. And in this case, the Multicultural Center, it's not about the building. Who cares what the building looks like? It's about the fact that there's an organization on campus that is trying to promote diversity in a way that not a lot of universities are trying to do at the moment. So it's a story about people. We're putting a freaking picture of a building in the story. I wanted to quit in that moment. I got really mad, and I remember saying this. If you put a picture of a building on that news page, I will lose my shit so fast. And the person goes, okay, what do you want? And I'm like, I want you to go back in time and care about the people involved in the story and get pictures of them. And so all media is really about the individual. The reason you don't put buildings, pictures of buildings on news stories about centers and groups is because you're focusing on the wrong thing. The reason a center is important, the reason an organization is important is because of the people who make it up and what they're trying to do for other people. And the reader only cares because it might have something to do with them. A new multicultural center might actually have some benefit to their education. Research suggests that it does. That's what our story needs to focus on. So you guys already know that media is about the individual. Social media is also about the individual. So don't be tweeting pictures of buildings because nobody cares. And so you can think about yourself as a journalist, as a brand. Media folks are knowledgeable content creators. You're not an employee of a newspaper. You're not a writer on this desk. You're a content creator who knows something about what you're covering. And you are just relying on that media organization for distribution. That is the new model. 50 years ago, you started hawking newspapers on street corners, and next thing you know, you got to write a little bit. Next thing you know, you were the editor, and you had a career at that newspaper. That is not how things work anymore. Now, journalists are knowledgeable content creators. And the place you work is just the place that gets your work out there. It's not the end-all, be-all. And this is just as true in journalism as it is in entertainment. I think entertainment is a much easier field through which to see the truth of this statement. So we're going to look at some examples. You have a media platform. You have a media organization. National Geographic, Medium.com, the New York Times, and working for them are individual creators. This is also very similar to a lot of freelance models. You guys probably get emails all the time from big websites that want you to write for them, and they're like, you don't have to come here, we just want your content. This is why, because this is the new model. So you have individual creators who are specialists in a certain field. They are knowledgeable about something. And they're creating on their own, with the help of others, of course, with the support of the media platform and the media organization, but they're reporting on what they're going to report on anyway, right? They're not showing up at the Washington Post and going, what desk do you want me to be on? They know what they want to do. They know what they want to report. And the audience experiences that media platform through the lens of those individual creators by consuming those individual creators' content. And so what happens is that the audience members are actually having conversations with and learning about what the platform's vision is through the individual creators. So the individual creators are giving content to the audience, they're giving feedback and ideas, and the conversation that's happening in social media and the conversation that's happening about your work and about the issues you're covering is actually happening between the individual creators and the audience. Because media platforms are not people, right? It's the same reason we don't put a building on our story, because corporations may be people in the eyes of the law, but to the rest of us, they're not people. So we don't interact with media outlets. We don't, the big idea of, hey, I called the Washington Post today. No, you didn't. You called somebody who works there. The audience experiences what that media organization is about through the individual creators. And this is why it's difficult for media organizations to have social media like Twitter accounts and Facebook pages just for their overall brand, right? How often do you go to CNN's Facebook page? Like never, because CNN is not a person, it can't talk to you, you can't have a conversation with it. So instead, you're experiencing CNN by connecting with the individual people who work there and talking to them on Twitter and talking to them on Facebook and leaving comments on their articles. What the media platform then does is the way they see themselves is they're getting the content from the individual creators, and in exchange, they're getting all the ad revenue, which they're paying the individual creators with. So the benefit of the individual creators sort of being in this mid-level and being the ones who connect with the audiences and make the content kind of on their own based on their own expertise is that they don't have to go out and sell ads, right? The media organization still does that for them. And the other benefit is that the media platform can do things like provide official communications. So if they are going to lay off 100 people and they need to tell the media that, someone at the media platform in the PR department will write a press release about that and take care of that for the organization. They're not going to rely on those individual creators to go out and tell everybody, hey, we're laying 100 people off. Probably not the best example for a bunch of young journalists, but I will show you the way to avoid being one of those 100 people. Official communications, content highlights. So media platforms can highlight content. The Washington Post, Fox News, CNN, these guys are all buying ads on Facebook to promote particular content. So they're able to pluck the best content from their individual creators and send it out even further to different networks that don't already follow those individual creators. They're going to develop editorial policy and put that online and be in charge of getting that out to the public. And again, they're going to take care of advertising so that the audience is seeing the ads that they're getting, but they're getting the revenue from ads, and then it's kind of, they're distributing it to the individual creators. So this isn't that different from older models of media, except with older forms of media that aren't social, you don't have this conversation space right here, right? Because the audience can really only be heard by complaining about stuff at the water cooler or writing letters to the editor. So social media allows these individual creators and these audiences to communicate in ways that they really couldn't before. So this is all really to say that if you want to be successful at social media, it's really not about what tools you use. It's really not about having a calendar of when you're going to tweet and stuff like that. Yes, those things are all helpful. But the big thing that you have to keep in mind is that you have to become one of those knowledgeable content creators. You have to become somebody who is an expert on some kind of content, on some kind of aspect. And you have to become very good at that. That's how you're going to get followers. Because social media is about individuals. And when people recognize that you have a lot of knowledge about courts and police here in town, or they recognize that you know a lot about the Muncie community, they're going to follow you because that's a topic they're interested in, and they know that you know something about it. If you're writing a bunch of different, if your writing is all over the place and you're covering just whatever needs to get covered, and one day you're a sports writer, and the next day you're a features writer, and the next day you're this or that, people aren't going to be as interested in following you because they don't see clearly what you have to offer them and how you're going to have an expertise and interesting content that they're personally going to be interested in. So I want everyone to think really hard about this. What is it that you're a content expert on? And the good news is that you guys are all really young. So if you don't know, you don't have to panic because you're in school and you have the opportunity to figure out what it's going to be. You have the opportunity to try different things. Them see it as well. So, okay, so you thought about what your angle is, what's your lens, who are you, what is your expertise that you have, that media platforms can help you get out there, that people will want to follow you for. So how do we do this? The first thing you want to do is come up with some social media listening techniques. Is this a term that's familiar to you guys? Social media listening? So the thing about social media that a lot of organizations forget is that it goes both ways. You're not just giving your content and tweets and Facebook and opinions and things like that to people. You actually can get things from them. When I was working in the journalism workshops and I would go to high schools and I would talk about social media, I would say, what are you guys doing? And they'd be like, oh, well, we set Hootsuite to tweet our stories every time a story comes out. Like, okay, well, do you ever look at what people say about you? And you're like, what? People might be saying things about you? Social media goes both ways. So you want to create what's called social media dashboards. You want to figure out a way to hear what people are saying about you, or to hear what people are saying about the topics that are of interest to you, or about the trends that are of interest to them that you could cover and work into your coverage. So keep in mind that social media goes both ways. And then develop ways for the audience to be involved in your conversation. So make sure that communication is happening both from you and to you. So the goal of this is to listen to the audience trends. You want to be able to communicate individually with audience members. The tip for these things too is you want to look for super nodes. Super nodes are people who have a lot of connections online. These are your influencers who seem to know everybody else online. You want to tap into their networks, so you want to follow them. Everybody knows someone who like mysteriously has like 4,000 Facebook friends. You're like, how do you know that many people? You want to follow that person and you want to tap into their network when you can. So those are your super nodes. Luckily, that was the bulk of my presentation, so you guys can go in just a few. How do you actually publish then for spreadability? So I talked about the importance of listening to your audience and seeing what they're talking about and looking for ways for you to contact them with what you're working on so they'll become interested in it, and also just to see what they're up to and what might interest them. On the flip side, you need to get stuff out to them. So how do you publish for what's called spreadability, the potential for things to get spread online? You'll hear lots and lots of tricks, you know, do this, do that, use all these hashtags, but really the most important thing is just that people are determining what's spreadable by what's called social appraisal. They're not looking for those tricks, you know, they're not like, oh, that person's got all the hashtag tricks, gotta share that. They're just looking for content that matters to them, content that's relevant and resonating to them. So if the text doesn't have anything in it that people can make meaning out of, that doesn't connect to them or have relevance to them, it's not going to get spread. That's just how it is. Doesn't matter how many ads you buy for it, people aren't going to share it. People only share the things that have some kind of resource for them that helps them understand something or make sense of something or think about how something affects them or how they feel about it. So you have to have good content. You can't rely on social media tricks. Good content spreads, bad content only spreads as a joke or doesn't spread. So as journalists, you guys know how to do this because you have access that a lot of people don't have. So think about that. What do you have access to that other people don't have? As a journalist, I know that I can go to a football game and I can get out on the field. And if I beg really hard, maybe I can stick a GoPro on a football player's helmet during the game. I can do that. Some guy over in the business college can't do that, right? And he's never going to have the chance to do that. I have access as a journalist that other people don't have. And if I have an area of expertise, then I probably have a lot of access that people don't have. So think about the access that you have that most people don't and leverage that to create content that's meaningful, content that people can't get without you. And then stories that resonate with audiences. There's this idea that, oh, with social media, people only read 100 words. It is not true. It is not true. People will read long-form articles online. People will read long-form articles on their phones. People will spend 18 minutes reading a really good story, like the case for reparations, on their phone, even if it takes them all day, if it's a really good story. So don't buy into this whole, like, we have to make it dumb, we have to make it short, we have to make it snappy. You just have to make it good. You just have to make it matter to your audience. It has to have something in it for your audience that they're going to connect to and that they're going to find useful. Social media. You guys all excited now? You're like, I'm going to be an expert in this. Everyone's going to follow me. 10 years from now, someone's going to be standing here and it's going to be your website and they're going to be like, why don't the kids these days know this person? We should bring them to campus, and it's going to be you, and it's going to be fantastic.